What's up, y'all? It's your boy JTMM, aka JustTenMoreMinutes, aka the Freaking 10, back again with Sabaton history. Now, this time we're closing out the Soldier of Three Armies, and this one is fascinating to me because you always hear the stories, or at least, I'll say I've heard stories of the guys that just, I don't want to say couldn't let it go, but to me that's where this really goes. Is some people are just born soldiers, right? And some people are born doctors, some people are born, just gifted natural athletes. And I think for Torny, I think he was just born a soldier. And I can only imagine him trying to return to civilian life and just not being for him. And I think that's probably, and this is me speculating, right? Probably what may have led him to want to continue to fight. To see what he did in such a short amount of time is also very impressive, right? Because you're talking about going in and earning all of these regards and these medals. And I don't think he lived, if I remember, he did this in a span, a very short span of time. I don't remember the exact dates that I saw for his life, but he wasn't that old even when he passed away. And I'm sure they may cover that here. So, just a very unique character. But I'm very interested to see what prompted him to come to the U.S., what got him involved in that war, and then, after the war, what happened. So, with that being said, let's switch it up. Let's check it out.
Today on Sabaton History.
Part 3 of Soldier of Three Armies.
Yeah.
Well, in case you didn't see part 1 or 2, we are recording this over Skype because of the Corona thing going on. And yeah, that's why we're here right now. Regular business will resume as soon as possible.
As soon as we possibly can. And for now, enjoy part 3 of the saga of the Soldier of Three Armies. This is part 3 of Soldier of Three Armies. Now, this is episode, like parts 1 and 2, I am not filming at our studio in Bavaria. I'm filming in my home, in my living room in Stockholm, Sweden. And my friend Ryan is doing the camera. Say hi, Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
It's still always funny. And our lighting is basically whatever lights we have from around my apartment. Okay, down to business. By the beginning of 1946, the world, on the surface, seemed to be finally at peace, but in reality it was no safer place than before. The Second World War was over, sure, but the fragile alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union had fallen apart. Now an iron curtain descended over Europe and soon separated the whole world into opposing ideological camps. Although Finland had once again preserved its independence, as we saw in parts 1 and 2, the Soviet Union was slowly clenching Finland tighter and tighter in its grip. The Finnish Communist Party, now heavily funded from the USSR, was growing in strength, and Soviet agents operated freely throughout Finland. Lauri Törni was now 27 years old, a well-known and well-respected war hero from 2 wars. But that put him in the sights of the Valpo, the Finnish political secret police. The Valpo was by now firmly under communist control. There had been several roundups targeting decorated veterans, high officers, and politicians. They found themselves under investigation for war crimes on orders from Moscow. 1,500 Finns were found guilty in show trials. In April, the Valpo arrested Lauri Törni. His cooperation with the German secret police was the only thing the Valpo could actually pin on him, but they accused him of planning to overthrow the Finnish government. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for treason. It was not until December 1948 that Finland's now president Juho Paasikivi finally had the power to call off the witch hunts and pardon those who had suffered under them. Lauri Törni was a free man, But the country for which he had risked his life so many times had no place for him anymore. He was an ex-SS man, an ex-resistance fighter, and now also an ex-convict.
Wow, so that I wasn't expecting that. Wow. That hits different because it's kind of like they talked about after Vietnam, right? And soldiers returning home, and I'll never forget Poison's Give Me Something to Believe In, right? His best friend died a lonely man, suicide, Vietnam vet, fought a foreign war on a foreign shore, and his country didn't want him back. Now, I don't think it's not necessarily his country didn't want him back. I mean, you're talking about the Valpo, you're talking about these witch hunts, but it's just it's that feeling of you go and fight for your country's freedom, and yet you have your own country control over under Soviet, but kind of going against you, and then you've got that on your record. Wow.
Many of his old comrades had escaped the Valpo by fleeing to Sweden and from there across the world towards South America or the United States. Soon, there were little Finnish communities abroad that helped other Finns escape. In the first half of 1949, Tarni wrangled with the decision to leave. Finally, he packed his bags, took a friend's passport, and made for the Swedish border. There, he forced a taxi driver at gunpoint to drive over the border, and then Lauri Tarni made a straight line for the Swedish immigration office. Once in Stockholm, he kept a low profile, and he even fell in love with a woman named Maria Palm. They were soon engaged and even planned their marriage. Maria actually traveled to Finland to get Tarni's uniform and medals for the wedding ceremony. But Lauri Tarni could not offer Maria a future, not in Sweden, where Soviet agents were still on his heels. He decided that he would make his way to the US, but his borrowed passport would not allow him entry there. So he headed for Venezuela first. In March 1950, Tarni boarded a ship to Caracas, leaving behind the love of his life. In Venezuela, Tarni met one of his old Winter War commanders, who got him aboard a ship bound for the US. Off the coast of Alabama, Tarni jumped into the sea and swam to the shore. Now he was in the US. Illegally, sure, but at least he was there. With barely enough English to make himself understood, he made his way to New York, where the Finnish-American community helped him with the immigration services. However, this was 1951, and Cold War America, starring Senator Joe McCarthy. The fear of communist spy rings and double agents in all walks of life was a hallmark of an age of deep paranoia. Once more, Tarni's past caught up with him. In July 1951, the FBI arrested and interrogated Lauri Tarni about his service in the Winter War, about the SS, about his prison sentence. Deportation seemed imminent, but at the last moment, a bill associated with the Lodge Act was pushed through Congress, allowing Tarni and other persecuted foreign veterans to apply for citizenship through service in the U.S. Army. Lauri Tarni filled out his declaration of intent and was sworn into the American Army. Since most Americans had problems handling the name Lauri Tarni, and as a way to make a fresh start, Lauri Tarni became Larry Thorne. Now, the U.S. Army was specifically interested in Winter War veterans, and the reason for that is that they were experimenting with a new branch of service, the Special Forces. It was expected that if the Cold War with the Soviet Union suddenly got hot, large parts of Europe would be overrun by the Soviet Red Army. So battles would be fought behind the enemy's lines through espionage, reconnaissance, and sabotage. For that, they needed veterans who already had experience with such methods.
The ups and downs of being a reactor. I was sitting in my head laughing because I started getting emotional because of how invested I was in this guy, and to see him be able to do that, and that was his choice, right? a forced. Yes, they could have deported him, but he didn't want to go home, and so his only option was to do it. Man, this guy is just an amazing individual. But yeah, I was sitting here and I felt myself tearing up and smiling for two reasons. One, it's in his blood, right? I mean, he is just a soldier. Now, I don't know what his mindset it was at this point, you know, and I'm sure, I mean, obviously he kicked ass, but wow. Wow. This guy's it boggles my mind. Wow, what a guy.
Cross the water, a new start. War still beating in his heart. A new legend has been born. Started out as a wrestler, some promoted her this.
Such a great freaking song.
By 1954, Larry Thorne was now 35, nearly twice the age of most other recruits, but he was still in excellent shape. The hardest thing in boot camp was actually learning the English language. After cold weather and mountain climbing training in Colorado, he was then sent to airborne school. By September, Thorne had passed all required tests and was accepted into the Special Forces at Fort Bragg. It was the beginning of the elite units known as the Green Berets, which we all know of, but whose mere existence then was still kept a secret.
Wow, okay. Sorry, it just clicked in my head. Obviously, I didn't know the story, so I shouldn't be shocked. But when it was son of Finland and a Green Beret, y'all will laugh at me, and that's okay. His dad was Special Forces, but Green Berets, yeah. Anyway, I'm not even going to go there. That's the downfall of doing this at, you know, this is 4:10. This is the downfall of me doing it this early, is my brain isn't always clicking when I record these to say son of Finland and a Green Beret. Yeah.
Fast forward to 1963, and post-colonial Vietnam was fought over between the Communist North and the American-supported South. North Vietnamese guerrilla fighters infiltrated the South, attacking both South Vietnamese and American forces. They transported their men and material along their major supply route, known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. However, most of the trail was hidden from the air, covered by thick canopies of jungle trees. For someone to destroy the trail, they'd need boots on the ground. Larry Thorne would be part of a specially schooled operational detachment known as an A-Team. Yeah, I know, to fight the insurgency. This was what he had trained and lived for. Didn't matter if it was subarctic Karelia or the tropical jungles of Vietnam. His first assignment brought him to a camp near the Cambodian border called Chao Lang, and it was straight out of Apocalypse Now. Far away from the eyes of public or high command, Chao Lang was a lawless area. The camp had been attacked and nearly overrun 11 times in just the past month alone. As Thorne looked around the camp, he spotted a North Vietnamese flag on a hill nearby and made it his first mission to tear it down, to make it clear that there was a new sheriff in town. Officially, they were to respect the Cambodian border, but in reality, this was bandit country full of guerrilla fighters. Thorne immediately reorganized the system and ordered an aggressive stance against the enemy. His mantra that a good defense was a strong offense meant that he would attack the enemy wherever he showed himself. Similar to the winters in Karelia, the terrain dictated the battle in Vietnam. Brute force meant little inside the jungle. And once more, Thorne's daring and unconventional thinking showed results. He ambushed the ambushers and booby-trapped their supply routes. After his 180-day-long first tour in Vietnam had ended, he and everyone else in his team received the Purple Heart for wounds taken in battle, but they came back alive. Thorne was also awarded the Bronze Star for valor. This would not be Thorne's only tour, though. American High Command wanted to deal the Ho Chi Minh Trail a crippling blow. This time, they planned on using small reconnaissance teams to infiltrate Laos, to locate Viet Cong supply depots, mark them for airstrikes. But since operations in Laos were political dynamite, they needed the best of the best. Larry Thorne was top of their list. On October 18, 1965, 3 King B Special Forces helicopters made their way towards the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Larry Thorne was now 46 years old, and this time, he was only there to make sure that the insertion would go as planned. The 3 helicopters moved forward, flying low above the treetops. But as they approached the landing zone, the weather went bad. Rain clouds hung like steamy curtains over the surrounding mountain ridges. Thorne was about to call it all off, but then the weather cleared for a moment and the men were dropped into the zone. Thorne's helicopter circled high above them. He chose to remain in place until the team leader gave the radio signal, but by then, the weather had turned again. A storm was approaching. The King Bee was an old model with outdated instruments. At first, they were headed north. Another helicopter trying to follow their radio frequency noticed that they suddenly made a 180-degree turn. And then they were gone. The King Bee had vanished. Reports that Thorne was missing reached headquarters soon after. 56 search and rescue missions were mounted, but they found nothing. No crash site, no radio contact, not a trace of what had happened. So Larry Thorne was listed as missing in action. It was assumed that the helicopter had crashed in the jungle and there were no survivors. A year later, on October 19, 1966, he was officially declared dead. He was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Rumors, of course, circulated. People could simply not believe that Larry Thorne, the legend, had disappeared. Many hoped that he was still alive somewhere, but they also feared that he might have been captured by the North Vietnamese, or worse, turned over to the Russians. Others half-jokingly said that maybe he simply walked out of Laos and started a new life again somewhere else. I mean, he'd done it before. In the late 1990s, a task force finally found maybe something. A crash site not far from Thorne's last known position. There they found the remains of a crashed King Bee. They located some bone fragments and teeth, but these were too old and too few for reliable DNA identification. They had also lost 2 other King Bees in that area. So, could this really be the right crash site? On September 7, 1999, the remains were recovered and brought to the U.S., but in 2003, the files were officially closed. Who knows? Over the years, friends and comrades met and remembered Larry Thorne, aka Larry Thorne, a man who had excelled at combat literally like no one else, and a soldier of 3 armies.
I'm trying to contain my emotion here because that's heartbreaking. Because I was fully invested in this guy. Wow. That's heartbreaking. Like, I'm literally on the verge of tears right now. Wow.
Now, this is quite interesting because a few weeks ago we did Into the Fire with Per, and that's your only song that's about the Vietnam War, like the whole song, right? Yep. But obviously, what we just saw today is about events that happened in Vietnam.
That's true, actually. I hadn't thought of that, actually. But yeah, that's where he ended his military career and life, I guess.
Is there any special reason for you, or is it just a chance that you haven't written more songs about Vietnam? Because you've written a lot about World War II, for example.
Oh, good question. No, I don't know, actually. There should be. I mean, so many stories come across from there, but I think it comes down to that we've turned into doing more and more thematic albums.
Yeah.
Like we did now, The Great War. So
Interesting to write something about something from the Vietnamese, like the Viet Cong perspective, since you have stories about not just about Allied people in World War II. You have songs about Germans.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to do 2 or 3 sides. Like we're doing 3 episodes about Soldier of 3 Armies now. It would be so interesting to do the same thing, but musically, to cover events from the same event. I
Same
guess,
events
from different perspectives would be really interesting musically, I guess.
This is what I love about Sabaton, right? Is because you could see as soon as Indy said that, the look on Joachim's face of, no, we haven't. But instantly you saw the wheels turning. They have an unlimited set of content that they could create based off history's events in different areas. They've brought to light so many different things, and like this, and I'm still freaking heartbroken. Honestly, I have to stop because I'm starting to get emotional again. But it truly wants me to add to my bucket list of visiting Arlington and visiting his grave. He just deserves that respect. Man, that bothers me.
Well, there's so much tie-ins you can do musically as well,
Yeah.
You could build the music as, or you could have the pre-chorus the same from both songs, but modulated. One could be in minor key, one could be in a major key, so they're sort of hinting at each other.
And the major key one could have the bagpipes, just like like Static. I'll never forget that. That's the only song that you wrote in a major key. Hey, but I did want to ask you about the actual song, because in the other episodes, we didn't really talk much about the songwriting or how it was constructed or who it was with. Was this something you started with lyrics and then did the music, or you had the song sitting around, or how did this work?
Okay, so I'm going to stop it. I'm going to rewind it because let me give Indy credit here. We've seen Indy in so many things about, Sabaton history so far, at least from my perspective and what I've reacted to. But what I truly appreciate about Indy is, listen to what he just said. He recognized, and maybe they had talked about it, but he also, just being a historian, looks at things about the band as well, not just history. He is a fan of the band, and that's what I truly like about Indy is he's invested in both sides of it, and from a music perspective and from the history perspective, because a lot of people that do these types of things, and I'm sure that's why they partnered with him, but it's just one of those things that for me, I forget about, because I just absorb the information he's saying.
You started with lyrics and then did the music, or you had the song sitting around, or how did this work?
We started with the music, and it's a bit of a different one, because I remember I was going to Falun, our hometown basically, and about to write some music, and I was planning to write with one of our old-time writing partners, and people kept canceling on me. So I thought, what the hell, I'll go to Falun anyway. And just on a whim, like 2 days before, I got in touch with Tuba. We decided that let's try and see if we can write a song together,
And maybe they don't know who Tobe is. Can you tell them?
Yeah. So I should tell. Tobe is our previous guitar player. He was in the band from 2012 until 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And this is in 2014. The thing with songwriters, I mean, I knew he could write music. He'd written stuff before, but you never know if you're compatible as songwriters.
Sure.
It's kind of a fond memory for me, this one, because it's on this song we found out that we are compatible as songwriters. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. We're almost the same age. We like the same kind of classical 80s hard rock and metal. It actually started with me and Tub not knowing where to start. And he started riffing. It's sort of I think we started with kind of the intro riff, and we modified it. It was a little bit too much Judas Priest. I mean, there's still a bit of Judas Priest in there today.
Nothing wrong with Judas
Left in the
Priest.
song.
Yeah.
A great band, band we both love. Actually, it was a quick process and a really nice one.
Did you write the lyrics yourself, though, or did he help you with the lyrics later, or was that just you or you and Per?
That was me alone, I think. Could be me and Per, but I think I wrote this one myself. Actually, not sure. You're going to have to look it up in the credits, anyone who's watching this, if you want to know.
From the finish line into Germany, all the wars we came across.
And now we've just spent 3 episodes telling the story. This is fun, our first trilogy. Thank you very much once again for watching Sabaton History.
Thank you very much, and see you next week.
See you next week.
All right. You know what's coming now. It's me asking you for money. So, money, give me all your money.
I freaking love the guy. I really do. All right. I always ended on the credits. Except he didn't say get the fuck out of here. I always just love that part. It's just, he's such a character. He's such a lovable guy that you can tell, yes, he's a badass, right? But he has this side to him that we get to see of just the fun side, right? I love that. They're such great storytellers, right? And getting back to this episode in the 3 armies, it's just heartbreaking. Now that I'm able to speak a little bit more without getting emotional, yeah, I want to go visit Arlington. Because I believe he deserves that respect. And it's, I don't know if it's controversial or not as to why he fought for the U.S., as far as the path to citizenship, kind of forced him into that to prove his alignment, so to speak. But to then find out to go missing like that's heartbreaking. Wow. Man. What an episode. What a series. I mean, hats off to him. I mean, this story, they told it beautifully through 3 parts. They did it appropriately. They didn't just try to crush it into one episode, which they could have done and just done, 5 minutes on each thing. But they truly gave it 20 minutes each on each episode, and hats off to him for that, because it told a great story. This would make an amazing movie. It really would. Even with the tragedy that was his death. So many movies can end on that. And I think, if they haven't made a movie, they probably have. I haven't searched it. I mean, that would just be a fascinating watch. What a story. Let me switch it up, give you my final thoughts. When I wasn't expecting that. Again, I don't do the research beforehand, because if I do the research and know what's coming, that takes away the reaction. That's why I don't do it in the music. That's why I refuse to do it. I 100% refuse. And the one time that I did the history before, or the 3 times with Midway and the story of the samurai, and then Sparta, I didn't necessarily know, well, no, I did, because I heard a lot of the song in those. It really just kind of messed things up, just from my mind. It wasn't a bad thing to watch them. They were fantastic. But I love that my reactions, or I love about my channel, is you are truly getting my first reaction to it. And this was just freaking heartbreaking. What a man. I was really hoping things turned out different for him. Wow. But as soon as they said the weather turned bad again and he stayed, I was like, crap. Oh, I really wish I would have done White Death first and started with the sniper and been in that and then be crushed. That's going to be a hard recording. Not really, but this one's going to stick with me. This one's truly going to stick with me because my dad being a vet of the military, and finding out that we always thought he was a lower rank, and then when he passed away in 14, it was one of those things where we learned he was a captain that he kept to himself. Just having that and knowing how quiet he was, and he was in the military during Vietnam. But then hearing this story and the tragedy of how he passed, or how they believe he passed, man, that is just heartbreaking. Okay. On the day I get to go, I will actually film it. I am going to actually make that a mission because I think it's something that my kids need to see, not just with Torney or Mr. Thorne. It's more of the whole experience. Just DC and that area is not a great area. So I've heard. But so be it. I'm going to make that a mission. Man, this rocked me. Okay. Enough of that. Time to film the next one. Let me give the notifications. Y'all know them, but let me just do it. If you liked the video, hit that like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought. And as much information as you want to give me, I'll take. If you like the content I'm putting out and the reactions that I give, hit that like, hit that subscribe, all of that stuff. I do put a lot of time and I do put a lot of energy, and obviously, as busy as my life is outside of my reaction channel, these things are not something that I would necessarily ever watch. And so for y'all to give this to me, I truly view this as a gift. I'm learning so much about not just history, but this whole different genre of music that I've never really paid attention to, but now look forward to. And I don't understand if people understand that gift. There's the gift of the friendships, right? And I truly view my loyal subscribers that are commenting all the time as not just subscribers. We are a group of friends, and y'all are sharing your music with me and saying, hey, bud, listen to this. What do you think? And you just get to watch my reaction instead of you sitting, by my side. You get to see it. And to me, that's how I view my whole channel. And this history part, man, it gets even more emotional. And the things that I'm finding out that people's countries went through, and I don't care what country, any of these songs that we've covered, the stuff that in people's past both breaks my heart and celebrates when you get an amazing guy like Torney. It just brings us that much closer as a community. So for that, I thank you. Oh man. Okay. That's it for this one. This one's got me rocked. I'm going to have to take a minute or two to recompose myself before I do the White Death. With that being said, my friends, always remember, if someone asks you to stop what you're doing, don't ask for 1, don't ask for 2, and certainly don't ask for 5. Anyone asks you to stop what you're doing, always ask for just 10 more minutes. I'm JTMM. I'm out.